All right, everyone, welcome back. Today on the show, we have Alex Doobs. This was a super interesting episode, and we talked about a whole bunch of different topics, so I'll just keep this intro short because there's really no easy way to sum it all up. If you're interested in growing your Instagram page, I definitely recommend sticking around until the end because Doobs gives us some tips he learned while working at Facebook. As always, we finished up with viewer questions, which you can submit on our Instagram page at 2plankerpod. Yeah, and if you like the show, make sure to rate and subscribe. Other than that, let's just get straight into it. All right, so we'll start out with what we start out with everybody. Who are you and what do you do?
Oh, sure. My name's Alex Doobs. I skier by trade and a corporate jock, I guess, by day. Kind of. I work in New York City. That's kind of like my main go-to. But we've been remote for a year now, I was in New York for the first part of it and just had a great time, kind of moving around, living different places. When the fall came around, got the opportunity to spend this winter in Utah, which has been great. I have a lot more of a background I could give you if you want like
Yeah,
the full scope of
yeah. So
where I'm from.
that's basically what I'm thinking. We'll just keep it chill. Like, I don't really have any questions prepared. So, wherever you want to start, let's start there. Like, what's your journey?
Dude, sure. I have like a kind of a weird background, I guess. I was born in the US, but I grew up in Switzerland, Geneva. So my first language is actually French. But I do have a US passport, so it's like really easy for me to move here. Um, so I was in Florida, like 0 to 5, like in Miami. No memory of it. And then just moved over to Geneva, Switzerland, and grew up there. And Geneva is a very ski oriented place, right? Like it's a super cozy city. It's not too big. There's like 500,000 people at best. And every weekend during the winter, like people are gone. They're out on the slopes. And that can be in France or Switzerland. Like you're right on the border, so it's super close. Um, so yeah, I just grew up kind of snowboarding originally. I was a snowboarder till I was 15. Then switched over to skiing because I like wrecked my wrists and shoulders like one too many times. But I pretty much like on the hill as often as possible, like over the weekend whenever my parents would drive me up. And yeah, from there, when I was 17, I actually dropped out of high school and went to a ski oriented school to try to kind of like do the whole pro skier thing. I can get into one of the good ski schools because I just started like when I was 15, but I felt I was like progressing super well and was just really into it. So kind of just left Switzerland, moved to a like really small town in France called Abondance, which is in the Porte du Soleil region. So resorts are like Avoria, Châtel, Les Creusets. So some of them have like pretty nice parks. And so home mountain was Avoria, like from there on. And yeah, it was cool. I like skied a ton, but I almost died like before I even started school there. I like kneed myself in the face so hard that I fractured my skull like right. I mean, I say right here. I guess we're on the podcast, but
Right over
just
the
right,
eyebrow.
yeah, right over my eyebrow, and yeah, it was kind of freaked me out. And I went to the to ski school and kind of did that whole thing for a year, and it came time to choose like, oh, do I go to college or do I just kind of like commit to this full time? And just given like that injury that I'd gone through and just kind of what I went through after that, and I can get into that too. But I just kind of decided to go to college and take that route. So I went to college in France for 2 years in a city called Lyon, which was awesome. Had a great time. It was like 2 hours to the mountain there, so I still got to ski every now and again. It's a little tougher because it's like city life. Um, and yeah, after 2 years, I mean, to be honest, I was just like in a really shitty school. It was like one of those default schools that you just kind of like sign up to. Like in France, there's this like add to cart kind of option for applying to colleges. So you don't actually write applications and it's free. So like anyone can go. But it was bad, man. I mean, I remember like my first class, I'll always be like shocked by this. It was a management class. I was an econ major. And I'm in this huge auditorium with like 400 kids. And in France, you get a lot of people who will just like sign up to school to just go like get benefits pretty much. And this one kid literally just like lit a joint at the back of the classroom. And it was like weird because like the professor couldn't do anything about it. But I was just like, this is not the academic environment I think I'm going to be doing well in. So kind of like from day one, tried to find an out, and then eventually ended up like transferring to the University of Pennsylvania in Philly, which was like crazy switch of speeds. Like now I'm in this like super like pushed academic environment, living in Philly. Joined the ski team there, and that's when I started seeing the East Coast for the first time, seeing the difference between like skiing in Europe and skiing on the East Coast. Super different. Like
Yeah, pretty
happy to get
different.
into that. But yeah, so like essentially did my senior like this 3 year thing. So did my senior year there in Philly, then moved back to France for a year because I love the city. Moved to Portugal for a little, surfed a ton. Then I moved to London. I was there for 2 years. I went to grad school, worked for PayPal for a bit. Then finally got a job at Facebook in New York in 2019. Did that for like a year. And I got a second job in New York that I work at now. It's like a healthcare company. And yeah, working remote. So I'm just, again, like kind of like getting all over the place. And I've been in Utah for like the last 3 months, I guess, just skiing Park City, making the most of the park, some pow days, and yeah, here we are.
Yeah, you're a busy guy. So let's look closer at like when you were growing up in Switzerland. So what brought your family out there, like from Florida?
So my mom's Portuguese, my dad's American, and they met in grad school in Arizona. So my dad was working for Kodak at the time, and that's kind of how he landed in Miami. He's like from Minnesota, so kind of like not a typical place for Minnesotans to go to. Maybe it is, I don't know. But he got an opportunity to be an expat in Geneva, Switzerland. And when expat is like your company will send you abroad to work for 2 or 3 years and just like pay for everything. Then you got to go back. So goes to Switzerland, and this is 2001. So for context, I'm 26 and born in 1995. So 2001, moved to Switzerland, and this is back in the day when Kodak was like, oh, like digital film that's never gonna take off. Like people taking pictures with their phones is a terrible idea. Like that's never gonna pick up at all. 3 years later, they're like on the brink of bankruptcy, and they're calling everyone, they're shutting all their European offices, and like, everyone, you got to move to Rochester, New York now. And at that point, my dad was like, "No, but I'm staying here. Like Switzerland's too nice." I think it's good for my mom too because she's close to family in Portugal. So yeah, that's how I ended up there. And,
Yeah,
been kind of an expat ever since.
yeah. So what was your school setup? Because so were you at public school when you decided to transfer to one of those ski schools?
Um, yeah, I was in public school at the time. I went to public school in Switzerland. Like Switzerland has the best public school system in the world. I think definitely the best in Europe. Um, what's really great about it is that you get every opportunity you would want from that school. So if anyone's in a private school in Switzerland, it's generally because they needed schooling in English. So that schooling's completely in French. Um, so I was there for a while, and then the move to that ski school, that was like a boarding school in like a remote village in the Alps, pretty much. So yeah, I made that jump kind of senior year, which was like cool but not cool at the same time because I missed senior year in high school, and all your friends were like running the school now. Drinking's legal at 16 in Switzerland, so like we were organizing parties, and like there's like so many fun events happening on campus, like in the high school that was in the middle of the city, like free expression day, like people were shaving Swiss flags into their head just because they could, or like lots of kind of like different like drinking events and parks and just like getting to know people. It's honestly like college in a lot of places, but just in high school.
Yeah. Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. So did you have like a crew of guys that you would ski with out there?
Um, that's the thing. Like, not really. It was so Geneva was like you're 1 to 2 hour drive to pretty much every resort in Western Switzerland and France. So there was a crew in Geneva. I was late to the game again. Like I started when I was 15. Kids who were my age that I kind of skied with like early on were and that are still skiing now. Sampo, Vadoton, he's doing the Bulldoze crew. Those guys are killing it. They're all from like the same place I'm from. Remco is from Geneva. Remco Kaiser, he like won super unknown not that long ago, which was crazy. Big ups to him. Um, they, everyone's from that same area, and you essentially what will happen is like people will go to different resorts based on wherever their parents wanted to go. Basically, if you're like in high school or middle school, that's how it was at least when I was growing up skiing. Now it's changed a little where you can get into these like ski school or programs that kind of like it's like the ski school system I assume here in the US where you start at a certain level doing freestyle competitions and you work your way up the ladder to Swiss free ski pretty much. That's a little more developed now. Like I was coaching for one of them in Switzerland, in Geneva. So it's like there's like the local um, kind of level first, and then if you do well in the local level, which was mine was ALSF is what it was called, you would get kind of recruited into Ski Romand, which is the kind of French speaking region of Switzerland because there are four languages like French, German, Italian, Romansh. Regions are kind of split by language. So that was like the next step up. And if you did well there, you'd get recruited into Swiss free ski, which, that's like all the like big names pretty much are kind of riding there.
Yeah, and this is all freestyle skiing.
All freestyle skiing. Yeah.
Nice. And so what were you guys watching growing up? Are you watching like all the American content, or do you have a whole different scene out there in Switzerland of like different
Uh,
crews that like I probably haven't even heard of?
no, I mean, it was definitely all on U Schoolers, right? At least this, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I was just on U Schoolers earlier. I made my account in 2010. I remember kind of being late to that game too. So we had IF3 Festival in Annecy, which is a small town that's like 30 minutes south of Geneva in France. And there you do the movie screenings for like all the US flicks. There were definitely some European film crews, but from what I remember, at least jumping in, like the big ones were like Poor Boys, Level One, Stepped was like starting to get big at that point. Matchstick. Then like you had some European crews and you had some people like doing their own projects locally. I could name a few, but it was nothing like huge. I think like Legs of Steel was like one that comes to mind, or like more of the like powder oriented kind of ski flicks. But in terms of like freestyle skiing, there wasn't much. And this is completely like in theory, but I think it's because there are no handrails in Europe. And people might call me out on this, but like when I moved to the US, one of the biggest culture shocks I remember seeing was like there were handrails everywhere in Philadelphia. In Geneva, it's like it's old town. Everything's in like uh, old stone, right? Like you can really slide anything. Like you won't see many street clips out of Geneva, Switzerland, and a lot of that area in Switzerland around is like just pretty old, right? So handrails weren't a thing. And I go to the US and Philly, and I was just like in Disneyland, everywhere I turn, and be like, oh, like it's not a staircase, it's a DFD. Like when does it snow here? Let's go.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I think maybe there's more powder movies coming out of kind of our neck of woods back in the day. But Level One's always doing those trips in like Finland or like wherever to like chase after snow and get spots. So this
Yeah.
is just like not as ingrained in the culture.
I mean, so speaking of culture shock, so when you went from your school in France to the US, like so you got double culture shock because you have like kind of this dumpy school in France, and then you get upgraded to one of the best schools in America, but then you go from some of the best mountains in the world to just riding like some of the worst in the world on the East Coast. No disrespect to the East Coast, but like they're nothing compared to the Alps.
Yeah, no, it was really bittersweet. It's actually funny when I was like going to the US, I had the option to go to one of two schools, University of Pennsylvania and a school called Western Washington University. I knew nothing about that school, but I knew it was in Bellingham, which is in Washington. I heard weed was legal, which was like a far cry in Europe and it sounded pretty cool. And I was just reading up on all these resorts, like was it like Mount Bachelor, Jackson Hole, like all where was the closer ones? Like I don't even remember. I'm like not well versed in US ski resorts, but the snowfall there seemed crazy. And I was like, oh, maybe I just go do that, ski for a whole year. And then I was like, oh, never mind. I'll go to like they're skiing on the East Coast, right? Like I'll find it. So I went there, and yeah, I mean it was a huge culture shock. Luckily, Penn had a ski team that just paid for everything, and I mean we had a blast. I think UConn was actually in our conference. But the way it worked was you'd have it pretty much like a 10K endowment for the team or something like that. Like the presidents handled that. And you could kind of go and like do all these different tours. It was the USCSA, which is like US Collegiate Ski, whatever. And you'd essentially go to all these like pretty shoddy hills, right, on the East Coast. And the culture there went from like my ski school where I was like, focused on skiing, like had a coach and everything, to, drinking profusely pretty much like throughout the night. Racers had to be on the hill at 7, but you were still partying 3. And it was really funny. Like all the presidents in that like ski kind of conference that we were in, I guess knew each other or something, and like we're in cahoots. But we'd always rent motels like around them for whatever weekend. And it's where you'd expect to have like 2 kids in a room, and then everyone kind of sleep comfortably. There's like 4 kids per room, and there was always a dedicated party room. And each school also had a dedicated party room too. Then the rest of the budget we just spent on like getting a ton of booze and renting like Escalades, because why not, right? And we just have these like outrageous nights where it's just like degenerate like ski kind of let go. It was funny because it was like the ski team was mostly engineers when I was at Penn. I was like a business major, so there's kind of like there's definitely a disconnect there. Anyone who's in college will see that. And everything is just like on the table pretty much when like ski weekend came around. Just people were getting rowdy as all hell. And you pretty much like bounce from like club to club, which was essentially motel party room to motel party room. And schools would get evicted pretty quick. And you had to party till like 4 a.m. and 7 a.m. Like you just 30-minute drive to the hill because we were in a really like cheap motel somewhere. So if you missed your ride, like you weren't skiing that day, so you just had to like rally, like sleep 3 hours, like crack a brewski in the morning, hope for the best once you were like in the park trying to like get a comp in.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what mountains were you guys going to?
So we kind of all like around Philly, so it was a while ago, but I
Kind
think
of a weird area. Yeah.
yeah, it's like 2015, 2016. So at the time it was like Big Boulder, Bel Air, Camelback, Blue Mountain, Bear Creek, I think.
You guys were never going up to like Vermont
No, that's too far. Like the furthest up north we went was like Hunter, I think.
in New York? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we wouldn't go too far. And then our regionals, that's where you kind of like went a little further. We're in Seven Springs,
Mm-hmm.
and the nationals was every year was split. Like 1 year at Mount Bachelor, 1 year Lake Placid, which is like Whiteface. So it was a Whiteface that year that I went. So that was like one time went up north, and it's just like a week of skiing during spring break, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. And
Yeah,
so,
actually,
go ahead.
I was gonna say just I was listening to one of the other podcasts you did with Connor Clayton, and I know he mentioned nationals like a sophomore year and like skiing without an ACL. I was there, like I remember seeing him skiing and be like, wow, this kid is so good. And just like when I heard that he like didn't have an ACL doing that, I was like, wow, yeah, wow.
Yeah, I'll have to pass that on to him. I hope he hears that. So like going from the really rigid culture of okay, like I'm trying to get as good at skiing as possible to all right, I'm gonna like try to party and ski as much as possible. Do you feel like your skiing stopped progressing once you got to like stateside for college and you're just like mostly drinking and not really training that much?
Not that much. I mean, I feel there's a clarification I should make there.
Mm.
Yes, like we were drinking and skiing a lot in college. But that was like a college thing. And like
Oh yeah.
it was not necessarily like the hills thing. Like you'd have people there getting rowdy. It's still an East Coast mountain, but it's not like a thing. Most resorts in France or Switzerland or Austria, for that matter, have an insane après-ski culture. You have a lot of Brits and like Dutch guys just go out there and or just on a mission to like go get obliterated in some ski hut, not ski boots, and like the biggest culture shock for me with these, 2 different cultures specifically was just like East Coast. It's this hill in a random suburb. Someone built a lodge and a few lifts, and boom, you have a ski resort. Whereas in Europe, it was a lot like you were in a town where like people lived, and so you'd have seasoned people move in from like all over the place, right, all over Europe, because you could just like travel country to country. Lots of Brits, like lots of other folks, and there's a much stronger culture there, especially around opera ski. Like it was weird to finish a ski day and not go for a beer, right? Or like if you were at the park, more importantly, like most parks in Europe will have like the park cabin where there's like picnic benches and people are grilling. You can like have a beer, relax, watch people at the jump. Now I've been skiing Park City. Like I think I'm getting really good here because you can't stop. Like at no
Yeah.
point do you just like stop and like chill. Like you can go post up in the woods, I guess, but there's no like chill area where you can just hang out with people and just like listen to music, grill, have a drink, do whatever.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's really interesting to me. I totally forgot what your initial question was,
I
by the
kind of
way,
forget
but
too, but we can keep chugging. So like just I've never been out to the Alps before for context. So the parks out there, how would you compare them to U.S. parks? Because on the East Coast, obviously very rail heavy because you're not getting huge jumps
yeah.
on the East Coast, but on the West Coast, you could have a nice mix of both. So what's it looking like up in the Alps?
It's hit or miss. Like when I was growing up, we were all looking at Breck, right? Or Mammoth. Like they had the jump. We'd make jokes like, wow, like their lips are as wide as our slopes here. Like it was crazy. And I think 2010, like the biggest park I remember seeing clips from was the Breck Park, right?
Yeah,
Um, and that's changed kind of over time, and like other parks have like really just gotten their shit together. Um, so we always had FOMO from not being able to ski in the US, and we're like, oh, the pros are in the US. Like we had our parks where people were shaping like whatever they could, and some parks had really good builds like early on. Like Locks is a great example, right? Like they've kind of always had a stellar park, but that was like so far for us to get to. It was like 4 hour drive. It wasn't like a standard that you would have kind of around for all resorts. And then like I frankly don't know what happened, but it's right around the time I moved to the US. Um, Parkers just got their shit together in Europe. Next thing you knew is like Modolino's throwing up these massive parks. Like Audi 9 Nights had started around that time too. There's just like a culture of just having insanely well shaped parks. Like Maribel had sick parks. Voria, my hometown, has pipe grounds, and you'll never see footage from a lot of these parks unless like someone from there like proactively went out of their way to like get big and get footage out. They're just like low key, like insane parks that were hidden away. I think now like people are a little more aware of it because like the circuit for competition, at least from my perspective, has gotten a lot more international. Now I have friends like flying to China to do big airs now. Like I was like, all right. So you have a lot of these competitions happening, like not this year obviously, but like in previous years, like Corvatch or like all these places that just decided to blow up their parks. Um, so there's or like Stubai like got really big, right? Like all these places that I don't think were like always huge or on anyone's radar just like popped up when the scene became more international. Maybe around
yeah,
the Olympics, I guess. But yeah, so that's been my experience. Now being out west, like I love Park City. Like the park is sick. I feel spoiled, honestly, just like skiing there. I went to ski today, Big Boulder. And Big Boulder was sick. It used to be so great, like 5 or 6 years ago. They built that huge jump for like Sean Jordan Mutiny, and they had the Sean Jordan Open where it's a hill that has 450 foot of vertical, but it had like 3 50-foot jumps in a row with like a huge rail section at the bottom, and that it was all park too. I don't know what happened there. I think like Vail bought them, and things kind of went to shit. But
yeah. I've heard that place has fallen apart in recent years, unfortunately, just because it got purchased by Vale, and I think they just gutted the park.
yeah, I guess like their business wasn't so much like kids who lived around the corner who were buying the 100 or the Peak Pass or whatever it was, like super cheap season pass.
Yeah,
I think like their move was more like, how can we get these suburban families to like practice at Big Boulder so they can do their big trip out west to Park City.
yeah,
And
like the
yeah,
training wheels for actual skiing, basically.
yeah, pretty much. So that doesn't mean park anymore, does it?
Yeah, I guess so. So, like switching gears, looking back at school. So when we were talking ahead of setting up this talk, you said that like your senior year at Penn, you did a whole big project on like the state of the ski industry, and I'm actually like about to start a project like that. So, like, what was your experience going through that whole process of like doing a formal research project about everything that's going on?
Yeah, it was interesting. I actually like tried to go back and read it. It's gone.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, like, I posted it on U Schoolers, and I found the article, but all the text is gone. So like, all right. I mean, it was interesting. I actually did it for a sports management class I was in at the time, and it's kind of a tough industry to look into just first off because you have no data, right? Like a lot of what you'll want to do in like academic research is like have hypotheses and validate them or not through data, or just give it the old like I don't know. Um, but with freestyle skiing, I was able to kind of bring in enough of just my own personal knowledge of either like business and the business side of things, just having like a lot of friends who were sponsored at that time, and just kind of the research that I had done from like talking to like a bunch of people too. And one of the biggest takeaways that I remember getting from that is just there's not enough money in that sport because most of the money will come from media rights, right?
Hmm.
um Major sporting events like football, like baseball, like all that, most of their revenue is not from tickets of people going to the stadium. That's how they create fan loyalty. Like it's a part, it's not negligible. But it's always going to be media rights, right? Like people are going to like pay millions of dollars to like want to air the Super Bowl on their channel. You just don't have that with freestyle skiing because the audience is not big enough. And to grow that audience, there's some major fundamental like flaws with the sport behind like accessibility, behind kind of just the way even becoming pro is structured, behind the support for athletes. I mean, think about it, like all these like guys like killing themselves like in the streets, like putting out insane footage, pushing the sports. Like I don't know how they make money. I listened to Andy Perry's podcast he did with you, and like that was super eye-opening. Like you cannot make money skiing. I remember like when I was interviewing people for that project, I was just like, hey, like, can you live on off of skiing? And some people are like, oh no, hell no. You know, I've blown like 3 ACLs. That's expensive right there. And yeah, I still live in my parents' house. I'm 25. Like it's just not working out. Like I'm going back to school or starting school. Some other people were like, yeah, you know, it worked out, but I had to like hustle for like 5 years. I'm there now. But again, like, you know, one injury and is that the end? You know, do I get dropped? Do I fall behind to a point that I can't catch up? And this is 2016. I think a lot has probably changed since then and not necessarily in the right direction. Like with people like you win points now in competitions, not even money. Like, how is anyone supposed to support themselves like trying to grow like that? That's
Like,
why I turned to, yeah, that's why I'm on Instagram now. I was like, that's just like a fun way to kind of like do something in the ski industry, I guess. Like it's a good kind of like different channel to go about because the whole comp scene's like ridiculous now. Like getting good enough to like compete with these kids, you know, on your own in a park. Like when I was growing up, you were like maybe build a jump like you know out back on a good powder day, like huck a dub and like you know hope for the best and like bring it to the hill if it works out. You know, see a homie do something, like try it. Like that was our training, except when I was like at the C school where I had a coach, but even he was just like, yeah, you got it, Alex, you can do it. You know, now it's like crazy. Like Park City, you know, kids are like casually throwing like triple 14s on this like huge jump. They're like, you know, not even 14.
yeah, well, that those kids are just getting so much practice and so much training behind the scenes.
Um,
But so looking at like after you got out of school, so when did you? So you were skiing all through college. When did you realize, or not even realize, but like when did you start drifting away from skiing and like getting into like the professional world? Like what was that period of your life like? Where you're like, okay, I need to start getting serious, or were you still trying to keep skiing in your life?
so I never drifted away. I'm still there. I mean, that's why I'm in Utah today. The way I looked at it at the time was, you know, I love skiing. I want skiing to be in my life, like no matter where I go. Um, that said, I just at that point had other priorities in life that I wanted to achieve too. I wanted to make sure I had the financial like independence and you know I did make sure I didn't have to worry about money like in the future. And I was kind of thinking long term at that point. Um, and this was me just deciding to go to college versus like skiing. Like when I got to kind of having career opportunities as well, that kind of that mindset shifted too. But at the end of the day, the only reason I wanted that financial security, that liberty to kind of like do me was to do me, is to be able to like line myself up for like if I want to go skiing on whatever day I'll go. And you know, as long as you're staying on top of what you want to achieve for yourself and have a clear understanding of what your goals are, what your values are, you can actually make a lot happen. I mean, through college, like I was skiing more than a lot of my friends who were you know, working at a hill, and they, you know, they'd ski over lunch break, maybe for an hour for 5 days a week, and then ski whatever 2 days they got off that week. Meanwhile, I was a student, right? Like I just wasn't going to class for 2 months, and just like chilling on the hill and like doing me and enjoying that. And then exams came around. I just go back to the city, like get serious, like get good grades, and just find a way that I could always like make life kind of work around what I wanted to achieve. And to this day, I mean, it's really paid off. Like I'm in a position now where I'm like in a great place, just personally, financially. I'm like super independent in everything I do, and I'm still getting like at least 50 days a season.
Yeah,
It's great.
probably more than like most lifties would get because you work all day at the mountain. You probably don't even want to ride. You just want to like go and rest after you get off your shift. And if you can ride, you only get 2 hours anyways before it
That's the
closes.
thing. And like another like big point for me was the whole like professional ski career. I was never in a place where I was even remotely close to being a pro skier, right? Like maybe if I like tried really hard, it could have worked out. But I was like, what's that trying even look like? Like I'm not a bad skier, but what happens when you go pro? What happens to your relationship with skiing? That's what I was wondering a lot. And this is a question like I'd love to ask people and like see how they feel about it. But I've listened to a few interviews and kind of heard a lot of the same. And my thought about skiing was always like I want it to be my escape. Like I love my city life. I love like my career. I love being productive and like doing all these things that happen in New York and London and all these places I've lived. But I do also love skiing, and I love having that as my passion, my number one thing that I'm going to think about day and night. I would hate to have a day where like I wake up and I have nothing to do, so I go skiing. Like if I don't want to go skiing, I want to be able to have like so many other things to fall back on. And there are days like you don't want to go skiing. If someone
Yeah.
out there can ski 365 days straight, like good for you. Like I cannot. Like I think my max is like 3 weeks. Um, and a lot of what I've seen with like people who go pro is, suddenly you have your livelihood that is riding on skiing. And, let's say there's a comp day out and it's really shitty weather. Well, guess what? You have sponsor contracts and you have to like perform and you have to get a certain amount of points. You have to do something, which means like you're out there hucking meat, like regardless. And it could be dangerous. It could be something you don't want to do. You could maybe just want to like, I don't know, go do something else, like chill. And that always kind of like seemed like a very stressful situation for me, where it's like you're suddenly like turning what you enjoyed as your escape and just making that your day to day. It sounds great in theory because you're doing what you love every day, but I was always worried about like just the reality of life catching up to that, right? The reality of like paying bills, of like figuring out what you're going to do like past 30 and your knees are shot or like whatever it is, right? So that was like my main push for like that, what I was mentioning earlier of just go to school, get the hardworking years out early. You're going to be high energy at that point. If you want to ski like those 50 days a year and like get all that shit done, like you can just find a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it worked out great for me. Like I'm super happy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that you had a good approach to it, and I think nobody chooses to pursue skiing as a career as like out of from like a logical standpoint. That's a very emotional
Mm.
decision to go in and be like, "This is
Yeah.
my life. I'm going to ski every single day."
It's tough, but I remember I was doing that, the interviews for that article I read. I was like, wow, like, doesn't sound like it's working out too well for a lot of people. But I mean, that all that said, though, like I have so much respect for the people who do that. Like I
Oh,
said, this
for sure.
everyone like the step crew going on the streets and just like going massive on stuff, like no one's business. I mean, anyone who's put out street parts, like all these people doing comps who are pushing the sport, like finding all these new tricks to do. I mean, that's what gets me hyped. Like every day, I love opening my Instagram, just being like, oh, like that insane trick happened. Like, um,
Yeah,
that wouldn't happen if it weren't for people really like dedicating themselves to sport and pushing it forward. And like we wouldn't be there without them. To me, it's kind of like in academia when people get PhDs and they're going to be paid like 20K through their 30s and like
yeah,
never get a real life. But they're like the smartest people on earth, and they're just pushing that field and sacrificing pretty much like their personal well-being for it. Like I have a lot of respect for it.
yeah. Totally.
So yeah,
I think it all comes down to like work ethic. Like obviously, it's not an easy path, but if you're willing to work hard, that's when you see like you were saying, like the step crew come out and you see people put out these crazy parts. And yeah, like it's like it was, it's an emotional decision making skiing your career. But if you have that work ethic, it's still gonna work,
yeah,
regardless.
Dude, for sure. And there's always an out too, right? Like people who have that work ethic, like look at Steph. They're doing commercials with like Steph Curry now. Like
Yeah,
they're doing
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
I think it's like Cam and Nick doing that. So yeah, if you're on your feet and like you have the drive it takes to like get skiing done, and you have a plan for yourself that like will work out in the long run, or doing what you love, like that's probably the holy grail. It's just like not many people get it right.
Yeah, well, I definitely like that you got a different perspective on it. So there's some other things that you've done that we talked about, or that you let me know about. So what was up with your attempt at a goggle company?
Oh yeah, that was a fun one.
So this is trying to keep skiing in your life, but it didn't necessarily work out this time.
Okay, very contextual on this one. I'd left Penn, went back to Lyon in France, and I was going to do a master's in sports management at a business school there. And I had done research, and I know you're like going into this. This was my personal decision. Just given what I had learned about kind of the sports management industry, kind of like call this audible last second to just not go. And I just went to apply to like other business schools in general, business schools, and kind of shoot as high as I could academically. So I that meant taking a year off, and there I am calling my mom, just like having moved back to the U.S. She's like, "Oh, you starting school soon, Alex?" And, well, I'm not gonna go. Like I'm just gonna kind of apply next year. What do you mean? Like, what are you gonna do? It's like I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm figuring it out. And she's just like, I remember her losing it. I'm just like, you can't do that. Like, like go to school. Like, I'm not gonna give you any money to like, live if you do that. Like, you can't come home. Like, whatever. I was like, oof. That was a big start of my independence and like making sure I could support myself at that point. Just like, oof, that's a lot. Um, but ultimately, I was like, okay, I need a way to make money. So I started this goggle company, and that was based on like very clear research into the goggle industry at that point, which was just like a hot mess. I think it was like it's back when you could only buy goggles for like $200, right? Like
Hmm.
Oakley had a huge corner on the market with like whatever those companies were. And it was not a thing to have like that $50, $60 like pair of goggles. So I started poking around on Alibaba, which is like an open marketplace to connect you with manufacturers in China. I started looking at like how much it really costs to make goggles. It costs like, like $10. And what's great is that the plastic that you have on your goggle, there's a company that has a monopoly on that, and it's called Lutoxica. They're based out of Italy, and they own Ray-Ban and Oakley. So the like actual material that a lot of these Chinese manufacturers use actually comes from like the people who are making like Ray-Bans and your Oakley goggles. So in my mind, I'm like, well, what the hell is happening there? Like, why am I paying $200 for like Oakley's? Um, so started doing some market research, found that there was like an appetite for like a cheaper goggle. Maybe something that was like cool, had a nice design. So like I went off and did it. I designed it all. I started raising money to try to just get a first batch out. I had like $12,000 ready to go just from investors. A little tip for anyone now if they're starting a company: never start one on your own money, even on a loan. So prepped it all, and just remember like one day trying to like get my order in with these people in China, and it was so hard because it's a 12-hour time difference, and these people don't speak English. They're typing into like Google Translate, and then you receive your googly translated just Chinese text that's like you might not understand it, but you get one response a day because like that person's sleeping while you're reading it, and then you're sleeping while they're reading it. And you just know they're going to Google Translate yours. So I really got to the point where I was like tapping English into Google Translate to translate into Chinese, and just like checking with a friend of mine to be like, hey, is this coherent? Like, are you going to understand what I'm trying to say? But anyway, one day they just like stopped answering me on Alibaba. I was like hi, like they have all my designs, everything. But nothing, right? And radio silence. And meanwhile, like I've started like doing marketing for this. I've started putting out word. I started reaching out to like different stores to try to get my stuff like into retail. And I was like, fuck, like, what the hell do I do? Like, I have no idea how to get in touch with these people. And next thing I knew it was like two, like, it's like retailers, they like get all their stuff like ready by like September, I think. And they're like, hey, it's past our deadline. I'm like, sorry. I was like, fuck, like, I can't do direct to consumer. Like, I'm not set up for that. And I just ended up making the call to like pull the plug, which really sucked. And the toughest part of it all was like maybe 2 or 3 months later, this company called Sun God out of the UK launched a goggle, and they were working with the exact manufacturer that I was working with in China. I know because they had a patent on like this patent where you could take off the clip from the strap. So you'll see a lot of like these startup goggle brands that popped up since. Like a lot of them will have that clip, and it's from that same manufacturer that I tried to work with. Um, and I mean, after that, I was like, well, fuck, I'm not going to do this next year. That's in so long. So I just kind of gave
Yeah.
up. But
And that's a good learning experience though. You gave it a shot.
I tried. I didn't get very far.
Mhm.
I've seen people like go a little further. Like he's here out of PC. His name on Instagram's Iceberg Simpson. He started the Syndicate brand. I was just kind of catching up with him about it. Sounds super stressful. But yeah, he's doing something really cool. He was telling me he's trying to put out like good gear for like over that kind of like entry level price point of like $150 where you're just kind of buying shit snow pants and trying to put out like a good quality product out there. And he's just like starting it out. And I was just like, wow, I mean, good luck. I hope it works out. It's a cool idea, but it's stressful, man, to like start those companies if you have a lot riding on it, if you have your own money riding on it. I kind of like took it for granted when I would like see companies pop up when I was a kid. I'd be like, oh, that's shit, or like not even think twice about it. Now trying to do it, I'm like, wow, someone probably put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears for like a year into like launching this thing. Like, yeah, it makes me a lot more empathetic.
Oh, totally. Like you see a product that you don't like, you're not like, oh, this is garbage. You're like, not for me, you know?
Not for me, exactly. You probably have a target audience. It's not me. I'm not going to shit on you online like I might have when I was like 12 or 13 on e-scrollers.
Yeah. Yeah. Just it's the same thing like if you've ever made an edit yourself or anything like that. Like if you put out a body of work yourself, when you see other people doing the same thing, you have a greater respect for what they're going through and like putting their own work on the line. But meanwhile, if you've done or produced nothing, it's so easy to just be like, "Oh, this is shitty. Oh, this sucks. Oh, this is terrible," without any second thought at all because you just have no context for what's going on like behind the scenes.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny you mention that. Like, one thing I really do enjoy about the ski industry and just a big part of the community that I've kind of brought into my personal life, like wherever I go, is just like how supportive the communities it has been. And
Yeah.
that's from like the start, right? Back when I was a Grom, just like figuring out how to hit a rail, like dressed in my like, 2XL, like B Dog jacket, like huge, like gaper gap, like
Yeah.
not knowing what the hell was going on. You'd have people who just like come up and be like, hey, like, let me help you, let me teach you that. Or like, you post a clip on Facebook and people be like, oh, it's so cool, like keep going. And from that to now where I'm just like posting stuff on Instagram like every like 2 or 3 days, so much positive, like just love coming out of it. Like, and you see that anywhere in the comments, be like, yeah, dude, like that's sick. Like keep doing you, keep pushing towards whatever you want to push towards. It's people don't rag on each other as much, right? Whereas I feel like in a lot of different sports or industries, there's a huge like competitive kind of like shit on other people who might be better than you to bring them down kind of vibe.
Yeah. Or just shit talking in general.
Shit
Like
talking in general, yeah.
like a lot of skiing. Well, maybe in competitions it's different. But but like when you watch competitions, even at the start gate, all the competitors are hyping each other up. There's no like getting in each other's faces like you suck, like I'm gonna destroy you. Everyone's just super stoked on the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Like how many comp things have you seen where it's like a kid will land like an insane trick and it's just like everyone else in the comp is just around him, like giving him hugs, like that was
yeah,
insane.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah.
Cool industry. So speaking of like maybe a not so cool industry, what was it like working at Facebook? Because that
Um,
I feel like that is not a similar vibe at all.
yeah, it's different. I mean, it's a corporate job. Like I really enjoyed working there, like as a company. It's
And this was shortly after the goggle experiment, right?
no, this was way after
Oh,
the
wait.
Gog experience after undergrad. So I finished undergrad and then moved to Lyon, tried to like start this company, tank that.
Mm.
started another company which did well, which I worked on for like I think 8 or 9 months.
Was that ski related?
No, not at all. I
Yeah.
was doing yeah, no, I was like the ski industry is not for me right
Yeah.
now. Um, but yeah, no, I worked on that other company, and it did all right. Like we were making money after I think 3 or 4 months, which is great. And then I moved to Lisbon, Portugal, to like work with the EU on climate action, which is actually super interesting. And then I went to grad school in London, right? Like instead of doing the sports one, I went to a school called London Business School for a management degree. And it was after London, like I worked at PayPal for a year,
Mm.
and finally got a gig at Facebook, which moved me to New York.
Yeah.
So like this is, the goggle thing was like late 2016, and I started Facebook in early 2019.
Okay. Yeah. So that 3 years of kind of just bopping around.
I guess so.
Yeah.
But
Um,
yeah, so to get back to that, so Facebook, I mean, the vibe there was just super. It's cool, man. I mean, I love the tech industry. What's really great about it is you'll get a lot of responsibilities super early on. That's what kind of pushed me there. It was like consulting or like banking. Also, like a lot of those industries are evil, and while Facebook is also evil for its own reasons, at least like the people you're working with are generally super mission driven, super smart, also in their 20s. It's like a fast moving industry. I mean, you learn so much. Like at that time, I remember I went to work for Facebook just because it was like the cool place to work. It was like hard to work there and get a job there. And if you do, it looks great on your resume, right? Now, like I have that now. I didn't particularly enjoy my personal experience there for like a bunch of reasons. Um, the main one just being like political work stuff that I won't even get into, but essentially like takeaway with there was like don't work at a big company unless you're in a good team. Like there's a huge like clout war pretty much between teams where you're stepping on people's toes and you might end up like not working. Like I straight up had nothing to do for like a month once. I was like, yeah, fuck this. But all the perks were cool, like insanely cool office, like lots of free food, good people to work with. So like overall good takeaway. I think like for oh, and just for context, what I was working on there was I was doing data analysis and understanding like how we could structure data to catch bad behavior, mostly around people trying to sway elections in third world countries. So like essentially a lot of like what Cambridge Analytica did for the U.S. Um, different PR firms, which is what they were called, like public relation firms, essentially
mhm.
doing that in like a bunch of third world countries, which was like super duper sketchy
Do
and
you have an
impossible to
example?
catch.
Do you have an example that you could like talk about, or are you not allowed to talk about this?
I'm not allowed to talk about it.
Okay,
Sorry.
that'd be super interesting, but maybe that's for a private conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so what's it like living in? So you lived in like three major cities, like in a very short period of time. Like you went from Lisbon, London, and New York. Like, so what was it?
Yeah.
What were all those different scenes like, and like maybe even like just like a skiing slant on the whole thing?
Dude, well, I'll do them in that order, right? Lisbon, pretty small, like same size as Lyon, a little bigger than Geneva. I'm half Portuguese, so I could kind of get around. Like I speak Portuguese. Skiing scene is non-existent, as you can imagine. Surfing scene is great though. So I was only there for a few months. I was there for like 5 or 6 months tops, maybe less. Um, but I'd gone there every summer, so like I know the city super well, and it's great, man. I mean, you just like Portuguese working culture is either like insanely intense, where you're working like 9 to a.m. to like 5 a.m. the following day. That will is very common, like consulting stuff. Or it's a lot chiller, and you're working 10 to like 4, and you're having beers over lunch, and get on 4 and say, oh, like go catch some waves, and take a train 15 minutes out. You're like at one of the best beaches in the world. Over the weekends, I'd go to like Peniche and like watch these like tsunami like tidal waves come in. I mean, they weren't as big in the summer as they are in the winter, but like that's where the like world record for biggest waves happen. Like all those like
Those insane videos, yeah.
yeah, those insane videos that look like CGI, and then you're like, no wait, this is real. That's just dumb. So that's like a lot of that's in this place called Nazaré, which is like a just north of Lisbon. So it's cool, man. I mean, it's like a super laid back way of life. Like Lisbon's a great city, and it's blown up a lot, like in the past 5 years, I think, with tourism and everything. Absolutely love it. And then living in London, I think London's my favorite city. Like I love New York. But London was sick. And it's funny, I know like the people listening to this are probably mostly like um, you know, skiers who would never want to set foot in a major city. Like
Yeah.
one of like my favorite guys to like ski with or just like hang out with his Instagram handle is like Carcal Skier. Shout out Ben. Like he lives in upstate New York, and I link up with him to go ski indoors, big snow. I remember asking him one time, "Oh, do you want to like come into the city, Brooklyn, like see my place?" He's like, "Oh, never been to New York City." I'm like, wait, that's crazy. Like you're 27, like you live like in upstate New York. So yeah, never been. Or
That is crazy.
I was skiing with the like line traveling circus guys too, like a few weekends ago, because we were like in New York and our schedules. I happened to be in the same place, and someone sent me a story of them like in front of my apartment in Brooklyn. So like DM'd them, and I was like, oh, I know like all these spots because we'd been like hunting after them like all year. And so I like linked up with them, skied for a weekend, which was really fun. But I was talking to LJ, and he's like what from Vermont, and he was also telling
Yeah.
me like it's my first time in New York City, and he's like what 32 or 4 or something.
Yeah. And that's
It
crazy
was
because
crazy.
he's been all over too. So like
Yeah,
it's
and
just
that's the
funny
thing
he
too.
never made it to New York. Yeah.
New York City. So for me, just going back to the city thing though, like London was particularly cool because there's a huge culture in London of like flying places over the weekend. Flights are dirt cheap with like EasyJet and Ryanair. I was seeing day trips like Copenhagen and Denmark for 14 pounds, which is like not even $20, right?
Mhm.
Fly out at 7 a.m., fly back at 11 p.m., 45-minute flight. You go anywhere, like within 2 hours, you're in like 30 different countries. So I love that. And then London as itself is like this insane melting pot of a city for European cultures because like anyone can go there from European cities. So you just meet so many different people. I mean, the city's like fantastically beautiful. There's so much culture. You're in the center of so many things, like art, fashion, history, business, the techno scene. Like I love music and party a lot in London, and it was just like a great place to be. You feel so just alive there. Like I felt like I was living like times, like 4 Swiss lives in one life, pretty much in London. Like anything I do in London in a year, it would take me 4 years to like have that much experience in Switzerland. And New York is kind of like the same, if not like even faster speed. So like going from London to New York, they're similar sized cities. I think the biggest culture shock for me was like I went from London, which is a little more culture driven, and like when you meet someone, it's more like, where are you from? Whereas like you get to New York, and the first thing people say is like, where do you work? And this is not my vibe like at all. But to be fair, that's like a very Manhattan specific vibe. Like I live in Brooklyn. I live in a warehouse. Everything around me is warehouses. My neighbor on the left is a DJ. The neighbor on the right is a tattoo artist. Like everyone's just on some creative vibe. My one friend in all of New York, who's also a freestyle skier, shout out Willie G, lives in my building, which is like so convenient,
Oh,
right?
that's crazy. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, my experience in New York was like a lot more, like just a lot grungier, frankly,
Mhm.
than London. Like London, it is kind of posh. Like it's a nice place to live. It's very like I was in West London, which is like the nicer part versus the East. And going to New York, I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna live in a warehouse. Like, it's a 15-minute subway ride to
I mean,
Manhattan. Hopefully, I don't have to go too often.
yeah, you probably could have found a more posh area of New York if you tried. Like you
They're
said,
there, yeah, but like
warehouse.
rent's ridiculous, right? Like it's
Yeah.
super cheap rent if you live in a warehouse. It turns out, like totally justifies like an Airbnbs in Salt Lake all winter. So
Yeah, definitely. So what's the big snow? Because that's the indoor place in Jersey, right?
yeah,
What's that scene like? Because I'm dying to go down there.
are you really? Yeah,
No, I
I
mean
don't know.
it's just so unique. I've never done the indoor ski thing before, and the American Dream just opened up like probably right before COVID. Um,
Yeah,
so I've been
so that's how I
interested
heard
in.
about it. I
Yeah,
mean, okay, before American Dream, I would have told you like these places are trash, don't go. Based on my experience in London trying to go to these.
yeah.
So I know you mentioned skiing these big cities. I didn't touch on London, New York.
Uh,
London, I was flying home to Geneva, getting my car and driving up to the hill to ski. Not convenient. So I was in grad school at the time, so like I had a ton of free time. So I just like 3 or 4 week trips to the mountain, just like veg, which is
yeah,
great. Then when I was working in tech, it's like 30 days of vacation. Like, again, you could like fly weekends back home. It's super flexible. And I like quit my job in the middle of the winter. So I quit like December 15th and moved my Facebook start to like March. So I just like took the whole winter and just skied, like minus a trip to like Thailand.
Yeah.
But so back to the oh wait, sorry, what were we
Big
talking about?
big snow American
Oh,
dream. Yeah.
sorry, yeah. So back to big snow. My experience in London sucked. They had park from 8 to 10 p.m. on Friday nights, and it was hour to commute from my place on a subway, and then I had to Uber the last 5 minutes. Dumb. Big snow, 40 minutes from where I am in Brooklyn. It's like a subway ride and then a bus. Not great, but it goes. And the scene there when you're in the spot, at least they have a park, and the park is there all the time. It's pretty cheap in my opinion. Like you can get deals where it's like $100 for 6 2-hour sessions. These 2-hour sessions, like you'd have to take like at a time, but honestly, and I hope no one from Big Snow is listening to this, but like you can just stay, like
Yeah.
you ski like 3 hours, hike a rail. And you quickly realize that there are two rails, so you're just gonna be hiking them all the time. They're doing the chairlift that takes forever. So I was getting like crazy sessions in, and I think I put out 15 clips in total from that place.
Yeah.
From when it opened during COVID, October to December, and I still have like a 2-hour thing left on my pass. Like I got a lot of skiing in. Would I recommend going if you could go anywhere else? No, but if you want to work on rail stuff, great place to be.
Or you're just in New York and you want to ski, period,
If you,
basically.
yeah, during the summer, like off season, like whatever. Yeah, that's what's great about New York too, right? Like at 40 minutes west, I'm skiing indoors. 40 minutes east, I'm at the beach surfing, and you can do
Yeah,
them both in a day.
that's fire.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. So what's the urban scene like? Because I'm sure that like NYPD first of all they have way bigger things to take care of than a bunch of dudes skiing. Second of all, they probably don't even see urban skiers that frequently. So what's that whole scene like?
It's interesting. I mean, New York's just a huge, super, super high bust rate, right?
Hmm.
Like your issues aren't so much NYPD. It's just like mostly everything's like private property. Like even the parks are state-run parks, so like there's kind of a different authority everywhere you go. That said, I I don't know like how many people skied urban in New York City. I don't think that many. Like
I've never seen like any clips besides yours out of New York. I don't think.
the one clip I'd seen was I think it was like 30 70 or 70 30 by like Zaner and kind of that crew, and
Yeah.
they were out getting spots, kind of like in the Bronx and like Harlem.
Wow.
That's like everything I'd seen, and this year I swear the city blew up. I guess because it just got hit by snow so often. It got to the point where like everyone was in town. Any spot you went to already had a lip to it. Like it was great. It was like there's free snow park. All you had to do to know where the spots were. And we were opening up a lot of spots for the first time. So like when we were skiing, what I would do mostly is I was with a homie of mine, Mosley, who was like, we all work jobs, right? 9 to 5, 9 to 6, whatever. We would finish work at like 6 and just immediately like get in the car and just start hitting spots after spot after spot. Because the first snowstorm, we were like, this is insane. This is never happening again. We're never gonna have a crew to hit this again. Like, let's go. So you'd find yourself skiing from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Like just literally like until you could not stand anymore, or somehow made sense for you to like drop down a staircase of a subway station, which
Yeah.
is like,
So what's the backstory behind that one? Because I was gonna ask that anyways. Because that clip is
oh
just
yeah,
so ridiculous. Like that's literally like just middle of the night. All right, there's a staircase right here. Let's go down it.
dude, that was a funny clip. That one like got around on Instagram too. I had like my one point like my homie in Italy sent me like a clip from an Italian like drunk people doing things account. It's like, hey, my mom just sent me this. Like, isn't this you? I was like, huh, yeah. Like, why does it have 500,000 views? Like, I don't know, man. Like, no
Yeah.
tag, whatever. I mean, that one sucks because like I wanted to stomp that too. I didn't mean to like crash. The story behind it was our first night out, and we were just hyped. Like we hadn't skied. I hadn't skied in a resort since Hood that summer, and or skied period, and neither had my homie. So we were just, I think we hit like 20 spots that day, right? Like we started at 6 p.m. and went spot. I'm still sitting on like so many clips from that day alone. And 12 hours in or 13 hours in, it was like 5:30 in the morning. It was like, I have meetings at like 10. Like I should probably get some sleep. Um, but I was starving. And so we go to the deli that's like right by my house, just to order a sandwich. And I'm waiting for the sandwich. And I was like, well, is there any spot we can hit around here? Like, might as well. Kind of looking around and I don't see anything. And I've seen like, was a dude Trevor, I forget his name, but that guy was like flying down staircases all the time, right? So you know what, like why don't we like ride down a staircase? Like the subways weren't running from like 1 to 5, so like I assume there would be no one there. Like it's probably fine, right? So my homie's kind of like, I'll film it, like sure, I'm not gonna do it. And so we were like, okay, sure. So we go like throw. There was no snow on the staircase at all, too. So we threw these like little like white patches of snow because it's like a DFD staircase, so like on the flat part and the landing. In my mind, I'm like, yeah, that's fine, that goes. Like I've fallen enough like today, like how much more pain can I be in? Um, so I gear up to like drop the staircase and I drop down it, and as I go down the first, I hit the tranny of like the flat, and I'm just like, oh no, I spun right. And my theory behind that was like I had broken my right ski earlier that night to the point that it was like, L shaped. And I think what happened is when I hit the tranny, like my left ski actually trannied and got the momentum out while the left one just broke. And
Yeah.
since you're on, floor, right? Like it's essentially being on a huge box. It got more speed from my left ski, which like spun me kind of like clockwise and like into the handrail on the right. So I go down the second set, just like flying into the handrail. My pole's catching them, try to like ditch it. I just like come down like pretty much sideways, like on the landing, going pretty fast, and just face plant like in the middle of the subway station. Now, what you can't see on that video is actually like slid like pretty far because it's pretty sleek floor, just ram myself against like kind of the structure barrier that was there. And there were two people in that subway station. This one guy who's like walking out of the subway at Bedford Avenue at like 5 something a.m. who just goes like, "Oh my god!" And I'm just like thinking about this poor guy. He's like, no one wants to be taking a subway at 5 a.m. He's probably like super tired, like going to work, coming home from something, and he just sees his kid like in ski gear like fly and just slam against a pole like face plant in the middle of the subway in New York. It's like, what the hell is going on here? And then
Yeah.
the other person was the teller who like checks like MTA stuff, or like that you would talk to. And for people who don't live in New York, like these people are the most miserable people on earth. They hate their jobs, they hate their lives, and they want to make sure like you're on par with that too. So they're just miserable people to interact with. um, so I slam, and I kind of like, this guy's like, oh, like, are you okay? But before any of that happens, like the first thing I do is I just look up at like where the teller person was, and she's just there staring at me. And I'm staring back at her, and the first thing she does is just like turn around, go back to whatever the hell she was doing at like 5 in the morning in the subway station, completely unfazed. I was like, you have to have seen a lot in the subway station to be unfazed by that.
Yeah.
Like this dude screamed like, "Oh my god!" This woman's just like, "I don't care." Like literally, like just 2 seconds of eye contact. That's all you get from me. Like, bye.
Yeah, just another day at work for her. She's like,
Yeah, I was
who
like,
cares?
and go follow Subway Creatures on Instagram. You'll see like the kind of
Yeah.
crazy shit that happens in subways there. So
Oh, that's crazy, man. That's cool. Like I think that like the New York ski scene is just fascinating because I really you'll have to DM me some clips that you've seen because you're literally the only person I've seen other than whatever was going to come out from Traveling Circus next season that's skiing in New York because there's really
yeah,
not much going on.
dude, I don't know who else was there. I know there's like a big snowboarder crew there. Because we were hitting some of the same spots. I mean, I've lived in New York for 2 years now, and I'd been dreaming about like hitting so many of these spots. And when the snow hit, it's pretty easy to go there. But I was thinking like, if you don't live in New York, like there's no way you can know which spots are good to go to, which ones have high bus rates, like which ones you can actually like get in. Like we didn't have a bungee either, so we were like going on natural speed.
Yeah, that's gotta
It
be tough.
you have to have eyed stuff out like a lot and like had that like kind of skier mindset. There's just not a lot of skiers in New York who like would be going after urban. It's despite 20 million people being there.
You
So
might
in
have to
terms
put
of
out
like,
like you might have to put out like a feature length since you got such a niche within a niche. Like you could really put out like the only Manhattan urban film.
yeah, maybe. I mean, that's what I was gonna say. Like, I'm sure crews went there and have footage. They're just like keeping it for the fall, right? Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just like post on Instagram. I don't really like put together. So like, we film on our phones. We're not like out there trying to like get sponsors for films and stuff. So that's why my stuff is out now. And frankly, I like as many spots as we hit, we were just kind of like messing around, like trying to get
yeah,
as creative as possible. Like it really felt like Skate 2. If you've played Skate 2, like it's the same. You're just walking around a city that shouldn't have features that you could hit in theory, but suddenly you can just like hit everything, like move objects around to ride them. So like a lot of the spots I hit weren't even handrails. They were because like those are kind of like hard to line up. It's just a lot of like ledges and like cool trannies and cool lines that you could get. Yeah, it was so fun. I did had a blast just like
that's so awesome.
skiing the unskied. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you have like cooking up? What are you looking forward to? You got any like plans going forward? Because now we're kind of caught up to where you're currently at.
Yeah, I mean, not much. Like what I've been doing with my skiing this last year is, I mean, like COVID hit, so that was unfortunate. But I felt like I hadn't really gotten enough skiing in for kind of what I wanted, just living in New York for 2 years and then living in London the year before that, or 2 years before that. I just really wanted to get out west, and I wasn't sure how that I was gonna happen, but I was like, just have a goal, like figure it out. It will work out, and sure enough, it did. Um, so for me personally, like my goal was to just like ski park as much as I could and really like get back to that and like get better on like rails and start hitting jumps again. It's like I just like hadn't jumped in like a while. Um, Another project that I was working on was so when quarantine hit, um, like I'm sure a lot of people were in the same position as I was. Like I was skiing at Big Boulder on Saturday, and I walk into the lodge at like 6 p.m. and I can remember what time they closed on Saturday. If it was like 9 p.m. or 10 p.m., I'm kind of like, hey, like when are you guys closing? Like today, it's like right, but like at what time? They're like 10 p.m. I was like, okay, what do you mean today? Like, do you close at a different time tomorrow? Like, no, like we're closing today. Like, Vail just shut down all the resorts in the United States on a Saturday too. Like, I was out there for the weekend. You couldn't even ride Sunday. Um, and I'm telling Sam, like, damn, like I'm out here for the weekend. Like, what am I gonna do tomorrow? And the dude just answers like, frankly, dude, like I have no idea. I just got laid off. Like, I don't have a job. I just kind of have to figure that out. I was like, holy shit, wait, that's so real, like.
Yeah, like this is serious.
And that was the start, right? Like then everyone in New York got laid off, like unemployment shot up. Like it's not like only ski industry specific. But so when that happened for me, luckily I like got a job at the start of COVID, which is like super weird, which is a job I have now. So I've always been remote for that one, but I was bored out of my mind because I hadn't started working for like a month, and those were the tough days in New York. Like, I was in New York City during that entire like intense quarantine, like pretty much up to like November.
Hmm.
And you see a lot of faces of the city, but that lockdown period where you're just like at home, it was tough because like one, like half the city left first off, so like,
Yeah,
and
they
two,
just
like
got out of
yeah, and like two, you can hang out with people anyway. Like the people stayed were like a lot of the French homies that I have because they like if they were to go back to France, there was no way back for them to the United States, and to this day, like you kind of like still can't even come back, and it's been over a year.
there. Hmm.
Um, so I was locked in, skiing's cut short, your season's gone, like there's a pandemic, everyone's losing their jobs, people are dying, you're in the heart of it in New York. Like it's a depressing time. Like this is one of the most depressing times I've seen in my life. And I just need to scratch that itch. And I was like, what do I do now? And well, guess what? I had like 5 years of ski clips, nowhere to post it because it was like not on Uselers any like much at that time. So I just turned to Instagram. I was like, hey, maybe I can like start a ski Instagram, just like start posting a ton of stuff and like try to blow it up. Like I knew a good amount about like just growth marketing. You know, I'd worked at Facebook, which is essentially Instagram, like had a good understanding of the platform. So I just like started from there, and you know, it was like a personal private account at that point, like a year ago, like 1,000 followers for just like homies in New York or London or wherever. Turned it public, told everyone like, hey, like I'm skiing now, like deleting all the personal stuff. So heads up. Um, and you know, the rest is history. Like I had this goal of like hitting 10K followers. I think I'm like at 8,500 or something like that now. And yeah, it's that's just been like what's kept me sane like for those first 6 months. It's so good to have to just like put those clips together, put them online, you know, just have other people doing it too, and just being a part of that community that is now on Instagram is just so much fun. And yeah, like for my future, just come back to that. Like I probably gonna keep posting on Instagram. I think until I hit 10K and like cool it from there because it's a lot of time, man. Like it's you know, he had Dan on and runs a ski creative page, and he was saying like he spends like 3 hours you know a day on it. Like I believe that it's tough to run a page, dude, and like his is big. Like plus you know add on like actually skiing, like bugging people to like clip you up, like editing, like taking the time to do that while working 50 hours a week and actually trying to ski on the side too. Like it's exhausting. It's a lot. So I'll probably just keep doing that. I've like stockpiled enough clips and like make through the summer, get a hood trip out, and rinse rather repeat for next year, man. Like I don't know if we'll still be remote, but if I can get some off season stuff at just while I'm in New York, you know, at that indoor spot, and then next season maybe get an icon pass and kind of get around, like that'd be sick. I don't think I'll do it the way I did this year, where I spent so much time in Utah. Like it's you know, there's pandemic, like it's not a popping place from the get go, especially coming from New York. Like it's been great to have this much downtime, but every time I go back to New York, it's like you know, back to like the girlfriend there and the homies and like life that I'm kind of like putting on pause right now. I don't think I can be out for like I was out for like 3 months this time around. Like this is a little too long. But yeah, hopefully like more traveling, more skiing, and I don't know, just taking it all in.
Hell yeah. So yeah, just looking at your Instagram right now. So before we move on to like viewer questions, so what's your relationship with like these sponsors you got listed? Do they hook you up with gear? They like how did you get in touch with like Talty, for example?
Yeah, no, so I've been like the biggest Tall T fan forever. So just the three companies I'm working with right now are like Gilson Skis, Tall T, and Treefort Lifestyles. I kind of only wanted to work with brands that I thought were cool and like doing just like awesome like grassroots actual like ski industry stuff, you know, like not work with the big companies or like whatever. And I'm on Instagram, right? Like, you know, I ski and I enjoy it, but I'm not like good enough to be winning comps and like getting those big sponsorships. And I also, more importantly, don't need money from or like support necessarily from brands to do what I do.
Mm.
I do enjoy repping them and helping them grow. You know, like that's awesome. So I really wanted to focus on that. And the way I approached it was mostly proactively. Like I reached out to everyone. You know, ski season started coming around. And, you know, the account was like doing well at that point, like growing well. And you know, I remember when I was starting the goggle company, like I was trying to get anyone to rep my goggles, right? Like I was lining up athletes left and right just to get like awareness out. So yeah, I kind of had a good understanding of like what growth looked like from a marketing perspective. And something to keep in mind with ski sponsorship is, you know, at the end of the day, like you're going to be a marketing tool for um, brands. I mean, better said, you're going to be a marketing partner.
Mm.
Um, and I think like Andy Perry mentioned this when he was on, he was just like, uh, kids were sending clips left and right to Lion Skis, right? They were probably getting 100 clips a year or something. And he's saying like no sponsorships came out of that, probably, right? It's like who you knew or like whatever it was. And that's because like, yeah, you can be like a really good skier. Like there's skiers out there who are so good, man. Like I'll open my Instagram and like see like the most insane like bangers from kids who are just like throwing clips on there. Um, but at the end of the day, like as an athlete, you need to be marketable. You need to like be able to work with brand and bring value. So my value for each brand is like super different. With Gilson skis, like I reached out to Josh, who Josh Wong, who like runs the team, and we were just talking. I was like, yeah, would love to work with ski company, looking for something like, a little smaller. Like, I love that you guys have handmade skis. I honestly like not heard much of your company before, like just being on Instagram. Um, let's figure something out. And then there's a back and forth where he's just like, oh, like a lot of people like ask me for sponsorships. And I was like, all right, well, here's the thing though, like here's stats on Instagram, here's like the growth that I'm expecting my account. I just like went into data, which is like what I do for a job anyway. I was like very straightforwardly like, this is the benefit and added value you can get from like partnering up. It's like super business oriented, right? And that resulted in like him being like, yeah, fuck yeah, let me send you a pair of skis, right? Great skis, like I love riding them.
Yeah, that's a pretty good
And
deal.
then that was great. And then like Tree Fort, that was like a bit of a different one where so that comes run by KP out of Oregon. Great guy. I had done some Black Lives Matter protest kind of raffles with him over Instagram over the summer, and I was just so like blown away by like how stoked for a good cause he was, and like he wanted the company to be too. And I worked with a bunch of companies. Like shout out to everyone who like helped out. That was just like so like cool to get that much support from the ski industry for something that mattered a lot to me and to like so many people. But I reached out to him after a while. I was like, hey, like I'm trying to. Honestly, I was just like I broke my suspenders to Generals and I love them, and I was like, want to like hook up a new pair. And he's like, dude, for sure, like. And that kind of opened the conversation where I was like, I'm in New York. Let's love to like figure out some sort of like partnership or something. And we got on a call and he was kind of like, we were talking about like what his goals were as a company, right? Like, these companies that are running Instagram pages and who are doing partnerships with people on Instagram, they have a goal. Like they want to grow brand awareness. They want to grow into certain audiences. And as like someone who would run an account on Instagram or like, pretty much anywhere, it's really important to know who your audience is. Cause like, if you want to like be an influencer, like help companies grow through your own presence, like at the end of the day they're going to want to tap into your audience that they might not have. My audience happens to be like really New York heavy for some reason, and it's a lot of them are not freestyle skiers.
Mm,
I do have like some freestyle skiers, but like it'll be either kids like maybe 15 to 20, and like if I look in the comments and I go on their profiles, like a lot of the times or the DMs just kids like that. But then I look at the stats and it's just like 45% of my following is like 25 to 35. Like I'll see these people, they're not commenting, they're not sending me DMs. Like I don't really know like how that's possible.
they're just
It's
watching. It's like TikTok. Like they think your videos are
it's
entertaining and they just scroll.
that's the thing. And I think the weekend warrior type people who are, following all these, like my focus, I was targeting like ski pages, like the people who like follow the, you know, ski page XYZ, right? But not even like freestyle scene, like, free ride, big mountain, whatever it was, because they're going to be like, wow, that's super entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I really like focus on that audience. So I don't think I have like a very similar like following to like a lot of people who are like big in freestyle skiing. I mean, the reason for that is like I don't think I'm that good at freestyle skiing, to be honest. Like, I'm okay, I do all right, and like I have a lot of fun skiing and enjoy it. But I'm on Instagram too. I see how insanely good like kids are. So it's really a matter of like positioning myself in a way that got like that different approach. That was the only way I thought I could like grow the account. It's like worked out super well. So when I was talking to KB, he was like, "Dude, I love that you're in New York. We'd love to like get more stuff in New York, like get more of our product in the city. They're big in skiing. That's where they started, but like brands want to expand. Brands want to do different things, achieve different things. Once you understand that, you can be like, okay, this is how I can help you, or like, sorry, I can't help you. This isn't going to work out, and it's not going to work out both ways. But where those projects might align, and you can understand that and like really position yourself and help those people grow and like constantly like understand what it is they're trying to achieve, like what the point of the partnership is at the end of the day, like you're just gonna, I don't know, be a much better asset, I guess. And that's what I like was trying to do with the account from the start, right? Just honestly like work with some cool companies, have some cool stuff send my way, rep some companies that I've loved, like Talty, huge. Like I've been my first t-shirt skiing was Talty like 15 years ago. Um, and I just reached out to them. So like posted a story of like my girlfriend wearing my like team size Talty as a dress, which was kind of funny. And I was like, hey, I'm looking for a sweater sponsor. Like, do you want to figure something out? He's like, yeah, dude, I'll send you a hoodie for sure. I was like, yes, cool. It's like the coolest hoodie ever. It's like tie-dye one. Send me a few
Yeah,
t-shirts,
that one's
stickers.
sick. Yeah, that dead one.
Yeah, yeah. So just kind of started working with them recently, and Paul's a super cool guy. Love what he's been doing forever. So it's just like super cool to be able to kind of work with a company I've been like such a huge fan of for so many years. So yeah, at the end of the day, like the Instagram partnerships were a lot of proactivity on my end and really understanding how I could create value for brands. Help to have the business background and understand the platform really well to be able to like navigate it in a way that um, kind of was helpful to people, and also just creating a shit ton of content, right? Like product and just like being out there, like stacking shots whenever I could, and putting the work in the editing and everything.
Hmm.
It's a lot.
Yeah. So what's like your strategy? I mean, we're kind of turning this into a marketing case study right now, but like, what's your strategy
Sure.
for your like? Do you have like a schedule that you like to release it on, or you just is it kind of revolving on when you're able to get clips?
Dude, it's hit or miss. It's definitely schedule, and the a few things I've learned from just like dealing with like the Instagram thing for so long, or like this past year. One, you have to post like all the time. The more you post, the more like organic growth you're just going to get in terms of engagement. Two, growing a following sucks. Like for 3 months, I was posting clips, and like you can tell, like if you're like on public, you have stats that just gives you a lot of your insights. So looking at data helps a lot. But I started with getting maybe 150 likes on a video that if I were to post today, it would get like 1,000 because like I've not gotten that much better at skiing, like frankly,
Yeah.
like um, but you get that, and the stats would say like, oh, 50% of your followers or 50% of the people like this were not following you, which means like of the people who liked your video, 50% followers, 50% you got from either hashtags or being like in the Explorer. So hashtags are a big part of the game. If you use them too much, they're saturated and you get like banned and they just don't work anymore. And Instagram will never tell you that that's happening until you like post 3 in a row that like do super poorly. And you're like, fuck, because I can't use the NS famous hashtag anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember when I was doing that, I got to the point where I was hitting like a consistent like 90 to 95% of people who liked your content weren't following you. So I was getting 500 likes, but like no one was following me. I was like, what, how do you do that? So one, if you want to get followers on a ski page, only have skiing on your page because like people are going to open that and see personal stuff that they might not want to see. So they will not follow you. Two, when you're small and starting out, like I just had to like follow unfollow like every like a good amount of people um, just to get the name out and just like get on some radar. I've gotten to the point now where like I don't have to do that anymore. Like it kind of grows on its own. So that's been really good. And then just in terms of the content I've been putting out, I try to post at least like every 2 or 3 days. Like I mentioned earlier, it's like super exhausting. But if you can keep that rhythm, I mean, the way I see it is like you have like a potential bar, which can be filled to however percent, right? And if you like play the Instagram game, posting like every day or and commenting on other people's stuff and like liking other people's stuff, like you will fill that bar up to get like 100% of your engagement potential, which could be like 1,000 likes. But if you're like, posting every 2 months and not even really like using the platform, you might have a high potential, but you're only going to get like 20% of the engagement that usually you would. So if you play their game, they'll reward you and give you all these likes and stuff. Um, but at the end of the day, that's just like noise, right? Like it's just the likes, like I mentioned, right? Like a clip that got 150 likes that I would have posted a year ago probably would have gotten 1,000 now. It's really easy to get caught up in that and just be disappointed by, oh, like my clip got poor engagement or whatever, like, it didn't do so well. Like I'm going to take it down, repost it later. I remember getting stuck in a hole like that where I was just getting nailed by the algorithm and I couldn't figure it out. Um, something that's really important to remember with Instagram or like putting clips out is that it's not about the numbers. It's just really about like putting out content and like getting people hyped, kind of like online as much as you can. I mean, the reason I'm on social media at all, it's only for skiing. Um, it's really just like you will not see what I look like on my Instagram. Like my face isn't even on it. It's not even my real name. It's straight up just skiing. And I'm on there because that's where I see the ski community today. Like New Schoolers was great like 10 years ago. I feel like a lot fewer people are there. The way people post content now or like put out content has changed dramatically with how like easy and accessible and free video is. It used to be people were putting together 3-minute videos filmed in 69. So like, the vertical, like your computer screen. Now everyone's filming vertically on phones and putting out like 20 to 40-second clips.
Hmm.
Um, it's a whole different ball game, and that's fine. Like, yeah, the good old days were like better, but you kind of just gotta adapt with the times and just like kind of like follow the community wherever it goes. And Instagram's just like where I saw it land at least. So super stoked to like be a part of that. And my goal ultimately was just making sure I could like put out stuff that just got people excited, because my like best pastime, frankly, like the only thing I do to like really kill time when I'm like at a subway stop, so I'll open Instagram, I'll just like watch cool skiing. Like anyone I follow, like I don't follow my friends on Instagram, like sorry. So I do care about your life and like call me, let's catch up. But like I'm not really gonna play that social media game. I just follow skiers and like sick
Yeah.
content, which I assume most people do in skiing. So yeah, I mean, as long as like you can, if you're like doing an account and you want to like do well with your account, at the end of the day, you just gotta put out a ton of content, make sure people are enjoying it, and like put in work into editing. It's a lot, but it kind of pays off. It's rewarding too.
Yeah, I mean, you could be like a consultant for these kids that are trying to get, trying to start a ski career, because this is like you're doing it for fun. Like this is what they need to be doing to get known, you know?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's a lot. That's what I was thinking too. I was like, this whole comp route is crazy. Like, like it's so dangerous to hit like these big jumps, and like, you have to have parents who are super well off to like just even go to these ski schools and like kind of take that time off of school. And like we were talking about before, right? It's a huge investment to like go pro and kind of like to sideline pretty much the rest of like your whatever life you're gonna have in like today's society. Um, but with the whole Instagram thing, like I was able to do that kind of like as the fun little side project during quarantine. It's interesting where it's going. I wonder if that is going to become like a bigger like stage for people moving forward. Is it going to be like more organic content like put out that way? Like level one, like poor boys, they're not even really making movies anymore. Like I don't know how people are going to be blowing up on the scene. There's so many good kids in on like the freestyle circuit right now that I just don't know about. I don't know their names. I don't know who they are, and they just slay. And
Hmm.
I think that's such a different world now from like the content world in my mind, where people are putting out clips and there's some overlap, but it's not like movies or anything like that anymore. And as much as like these projects that are coming out are sick, like the Zoot Space movies and everything like that, there's been a huge shift, right? It's not like back then when it was like big film companies were putting out stuff every year and you're just getting stoked for the fall. Now it's like very much like online content, like direct, like people want it now. People want the instant gratification of like just clicking on a button, just like seeing like insane shots. Yeah, I don't know.
It's hard. Like it's changing so much. It's like where's the spot where you can see the people see people coming up. I kind of think that it's trending towards Instagram, because
Right?
being featured in a movie now is not doesn't mean as much as it used to mean. Like it's still super sick, but there's honestly just more eyes on Instagram. So it's definitely a changing landscape.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I do wonder. Like Instagram, the thing is, it's like diluted with other um kind of
Yeah.
audiences too, right? Like I said, like my following is like not free sauciers for the most part. Like it's random New Yorkers or like people from wherever. Whereas if I were to open it up and like go to my feed now, I'm sure I'd see like some kid like Jay Cartsetter, like Jackson. Kid's insane on rails, right? Like I bet a lot of people know who he is. Like he runs the rail skiing page and everything. Like that's like huge clout in and of itself. And that will pick up in freestyle skiing because he's legitimately like super, super good.
Hmm.
Um, I do wonder what that means for a career. Like back to like the business thing, right? How do you make money off of that at the end of the day? Like how are you, is it cash prizes? Like I know he's doing the comp scene. Like
At the
I
top level,
don't,
at the very highest level, it's cash prizes. Yeah, but it takes a lot
right? And
to
like,
get
yeah, where do you even get cash prizes nowadays? Do you have to like do like X Games or like
there. Yeah, you have to like win
World
those.
Cups?
Yeah, exactly. The highest level competitions.
Like that probably takes years to get to. And it's
Yeah.
probably not easy.
I mean, think of
Besides,
another business idea like starting a new like grassroots cash only style. That's kind of like what Andy Perry's trying to do with Telephone
yeah,
Tour, but on a smaller level, like a more competitive, almost like a rails to riches, but like a tour where it's like cash prizes everywhere. Would be sick to see that again. But then you would have like the comp guys come in that are already established and just rake in all the money. Like there's I don't know, you need like a US Open type format where it's like amateurs only with cash prizes. I don't know. It would be definitely be a tough balance to strike.
yeah, dude. I don't know how it works. I mean, honestly, like I think what needs to happen is just like platforms where people can create their own content just need to become more monetizable. Like YouTube. YouTube's created some massive stars.
Oh
TikTok too, right? Like people are getting endorsements. There's money there on those platforms. People are making it like a lot. Like maybe people just need to develop that if you want to like start compensating people and solves a lot of problems in the ski industry of like just straight up accessibility to the sport, right? Like, oh, okay, you have to be good to a degree, but let's say like you're really good at editing, like you know how to put a good vibe to an edit, and you have like a good agent maybe like running your account who like understands how to like get you money from just like an online presence. Maybe now like you can become a professional skier just from like having that. I mean, look
yeah.
at Andrew Rigetti. Like, I don't think he needs to ski and like actually win the comps he's winning. He's so like popular on. I think he has like 2 million followers on TikTok. And like I think a lot of it is from like the gym videos he does of like running around and doing all those things. Like I think that made the news. Like one of his videos went like it's stupid viral. Um, like I don't know how he's making money or like what that looks like for him, but Yoon Olsen, good example too, right? Oh, he's been like vlogging forever. I've met people who know who Yoon Olsen is because he vlogs, not because he skis. And you're just hitting like a much wider audience. Like it's made more mainstream. So I don't know. I'm spitballing brainstorming here, right? But like if you took like a platform like Instagram or YouTube that's really easily accessible for people, all you need to like do an Instagram account is computer to edit, a phone to film, internet connection, right? And obviously like to ski. Well, side
Yeah.
point,
That's
it does actually, but you don't have to go to the ski schools. Like there's
yeah.
always going to be like a bottom line where it's like not everyone's going to get to go skiing, but within the ski industry at least, like there, you can move more towards getting some sort of monetization for people who are trying to come up, like support themselves and not have to like lean on parents or like whatever it is, like get more money into the sport through that channel. I mean, I don't know. It does seem like personally, I would rather do that if I were starting out today and wondering like, do I just try to become like more of an online kind of presence with my ski career, or do I go the comp scene?
Mhm.
Comp scene's scary. Like I don't want to be hitting like 60-foot jumps and having to do like trips or quads. Like
I
if you
think
can
what you're
just
doing
like
is like the future. I think it's the future because like what you were saying earlier, what's the point of sponsoring an athlete? It's to get exposure for your company and like they add value for your company. Before they had to be in movies, they had to be winning contests, they had to be doing all these things. But now you could like exactly like you've done, you could add value to a company without, filming with level one, without winning competitions. You could literally just be a dude with an iPhone and be adding so much value to this company just because you've created a following yourself. So like I feel like now it's more accessible than ever to be able to attract a company because you'd be like, hey, listen, I'm only freaking 13 years old, but I got all these people following me and I got all these eyes on me. Like that's the added value for your company.
yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. I do wonder where it'll go. I mean, like you said, right? Like sponsorship, like it's getting your brand out, and while you could put your skis on really good comp kids, like where are I mean, case in point,
Who's
right? Like
watching? Like who's
who's
watching?
watching that?
Yeah, who's watching like an obscure competition in some European country? Like the guy that's placing fifth, like he's super sick, but who's seeing that?
I'm not saying I don't even know where to watch it.
I
I know
don't,
where to like
there's
I
no.
might see it on Instagram like a day later. Like, it's yeah. Well, I
Oh.
guess we'll see like how it turns out, but uh, that just makes a lot more sense to me than pushing the comp scene.
So we'll round it out because we're running a bit long, but this was a great
Uh,
conversation. So let's get into some viewer questions. I got that's what I was doing on my phone right here. I was just playing around with it. So one we got here, they took a screenshot of. So tag.harris asked, "What's your favorite rail trick?" He actually had two questions, but the first one's, "What's your favorite rail trick?"
okay, shout out Tag Harris. I was skiing with him one day at Park City, like trying to teach him back forwards.
Well,
Like he was so
this is
down.
part two. This is part two at Park City.
Oh, really? Okay, we'll get into that. But my favorite rail trick, 2P4. Such a cool trick. So
Yeah.
cool to see. So hard to do. But once you have it locked, like it's there. I think it probably like looks the sickest just in terms of like mix of like tech and style and just kind of like 2P2 was like huge, right? It's been around for like years. 2P4 was like that one up. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's a trick I really like.
Hell yeah. And the second part, it's not even a question, and that's probably what you were about to talk about. And he said, "Thanks again for helping me when I separated my shoulder at Park City."
Yeah, we were trying to teach him back fours. I ski alone in Park City. Like I don't have friends here, honestly. I just like go out on the hill and do me. Like all my friends are too old to ski now because like the broken knees, or I don't really know anyone in Utah anyway. So I was skiing with him and we're trying to teach him back fours. And there's this A frame at the bottom of the park that I just like love. And he tried a back four on it and like just came out off weird and just went shoulder first into like pretty much an ice rink into the landing and just split his shoulder. It was like the last run of the day and it was like so sad. I was so bummed for him. But yeah, I just kind of like hung out with him until the emergency room. I was like, what can I do to help? Like, it was yeah, he's a champ for getting after it. I think he's getting out skiing again. He was just like DMing me earlier. So yeah, shout
Yeah.
out to him. Glad to see him back.
Looking out for the homies. All right, so my buddy Grant asks, so you're a park rat. You ever send some crazy stuff in the backcountry?
Dude, yeah, I love backcountry. I'd be there more than the park. Like anytime there's powder, like you want to see me in the park. I'm like chasing after powder. Um, Crazy sense. I don't know. I was up in like Grizzly Gorge, I think it's called, near Alta here in Utah. It's so sick. It's like the biggest backcountry snow park you've ever seen. Like Pyramid Gaps there, Chad's Gaps there. Like I didn't know they were all in the same place.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff is already like shaped too, so you could hit it, except they're like crazy, like gnarly, like 80
Mhm.
foot gaps. Um, we built some stuff out there, just like trying some Doobs into like soft snow. Yeah, that's about it. Like I think the gnarliest things I've sent were just like lines of like insane powder ridges that I remember doing with friends. Where like there's this one cliff I had in Navoria that was like huge, just in the middle of the woods. Huge for me at the time. I think it had to be like at least 30 feet, which I don't know, was super intimidating. Plus you like carry you down, right? So like probably took it 40. Yeah, that's probably like the craziest thing I've done. I wish I had more time to get on the backcountry.
No, it's all right. It's
Uh,
tough. It's tough to get out there, and like honestly, being on a chairlift is just so much more convenient. Like you literally just sit down and you're at the top instead of working all day to get up for like a couple runs.
I mean, I would do that, dude. Living in the city, you just can't even get out to powder most of the time, right?
Yeah,
Like it's a
yeah.
lot of that too.
Um, all right. And Grant also asked, "What's your biggest Jerry moment you've ever had?"
Oh, oof, a lot. Uh,
Career Jerry. Yeah.
um, biggest Jerry moment was probably like really early on. I like hit this box. Imagine a dance floor about a foot off the ground, and maybe like 3 feet wide. I just tried to like get on it and slide sideways so I could get into a ski slide. I just immediately slid out, fell on my shoulder and separated it, and had to like go to the hospital and then rehab for 3 months. That was pretty cool. good
Yeah.
old Jerry moment. Um, yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah. Stupid injuries are
Oh yeah.
pretty common staple. I have one myself on my knee right now. Not
Oh
pleasant.
no.
All right, and then the last one that we'll do is from the underscore Caruso, my buddy Tom, and he says, what do you think brings your videos to the next level? And so, like, kind of where I'll take that is like, how do you get creative with your videos? Because anybody can just hold up a camera and like just film. Like, what do you think separates your videos? Is it like better tricks, better filming, better features? Like, what do you think like separates these Instagram clips?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know, to be honest. I don't even know if my clips really like stand out. It's not feedback you get too much of the time. What I do to try to like add my own flavor to whatever I'm doing is um the music is like a big one for me. I used to post rap into songs and cool, roots with skiing. Now I just like put up music I actually listen to.
Yeah.
And it's great. It's just like a lot of fun to do. Beyond that, like a lot of it's just editing and figuring out like what your style of editing is. Um, it's hit or miss with Instagram specifically because of the algorithm. And essentially, like one, you can have a style. The problem with like having a style that's like overly creative where you're using clips that are not skiing in the first 3 seconds, people aren't gonna watch them, dude. Like, because people are scrolling, right? Like,
Mhm.
if you don't see skiing or like a banger on its way within the first second, like you're just gonna slide to the next post where you might just see that. And I know people do this because I'm guilty of doing it myself. Like, I'm the best like user test for this because I'm like my main audience. So like what I try to do is now have like whatever the opening 2 or 3 seconds of it of my clip like be like something that catches attention, and then just like have fun with editing, right? Like do something cool, creative. I try out so many things. I don't know what works or what doesn't. It's really a matter of just like having fun with it. And I think if you, as long as you're having fun making clips, they'll come off as fun when you're done with them, and you'll have fun watching them too. Um, yeah, it's a lot of that. Like if I'm scrolling through Instagram again, thinking about myself using it, like if I see just like a random like raw clip of just like tricks shot from far, like I know the trick's super sick. If it's not filmed right, if it's not edited right, if there's not like music going with it that like creates a vibe that I'm gonna enjoy, I won't connect with it as much. Whereas the trick in it of itself might be insane. Um, so yeah, I guess
Hell
the
yeah.
filming does come into play.
Yeah. Well, that's all I have. Thank you for coming on today. Maybe like tell people where they could find you and anything else you want to leave off with.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for taking the time. Find me on Instagram, I guess, at _Doobs, DOOBS. Find me also at Park City until like Tuesday. So I'm closing day. And yeah, roaming the streets of New York, I guess.
Hell yeah.
Um, yeah, nothing else to add. Thanks for listening, anyone who made it this far, I guess.
Yeah. If they made it this far, like
I think
huge.
we've been on for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.